When Japanese tractors entered America. There is a moment in every industry when something foreign arrives quietly, almost unnoticed at first, and the people already dominating the land laugh at it because it looks too small, too different, too unfamiliar to ever become a real threat. American farming had one of those moments, and it began not with war, not with politics, but with machines. Green fields stretched across the Midwest beneath giant open skies, and for decades the sound of American farming had always felt heavy. Large engines, deep mechanical growls, massive tractors pulling through endless acres of corn and wheat like steel giants built for a continent too wide to see all at once. In places like Iowa and Nebraska, farming was power. Big land, big equipment, big expectations. American manufacturers like John Deere and Case IH understood this world perfectly. Their tractors were enormous, loud, and built with one purpose in mind: dominate vast landscapes for endless hours without slowing down. Then something unusual appeared. Smaller machines, quieter machines, machines from Japan. And at first, almost nobody in American farming took them seriously. If you are watching this story, subscribe and share the video, because what happened next completely changed the farming industry forever. The arrival of Japanese tractors into American soil did not look dramatic in the beginning. There were no giant headlines announcing an invasion of farming technology. Instead, the machines appeared slowly, mostly in smaller farms, orchards, vegetable operations, and properties where gigantic American tractors felt too large and too expensive for the work being done. Brands like Kubota and Yanmar entered quietly, carrying with them a completely different philosophy of engineering, one shaped not by the endless plains of America but by the narrow rice paddies and tight agricultural spaces of Japan. That difference changed everything. American tractors had been designed like heavyweight workhorses, massive low-end torque, giant steel frames, engines that sounded powerful enough to shake the ground beneath them. They were built for giant farms where one machine might work across thousands of acres beneath brutal heat for entire days. Size itself became part of the identity. Bigger often meant better. But Japanese engineers came from a country where land was limited and precision mattered more than brute force. Their machines were compact, incredibly fuel-efficient, smooth, and strangely refined compared to the rough industrial feeling many American farmers were used to. Instead of focusing entirely on size, they focused on efficiency per inch. Every movement, every vibration, every drop of fuel. The machines felt calculated with almost surgical precision. And this is where the tension truly began. Because the first American farmers who tried Japanese tractors noticed something uncomfortable. The small machines worked surprisingly well. In fact, in certain conditions, they worked better. Farmers started talking quietly at equipment dealerships and rural supply stores. Some admitted the Japanese tractors were easier to maneuver. Others said they used far less fuel. Orchard farmers loved how compact they were between narrow rows of trees. Smaller property owners discovered they could buy dependable machinery without spending the enormous amounts required for giant American equipment. And slowly, a dangerous thought entered the American market. What if bigger was not always better? That question threatened decades of farming identity in the United States because American farming culture had always connected size with strength. Huge tractors became symbols of dominance over the land itself. They represented expansion, industrial power, and economic confidence. But the Japanese machines approached farming almost like craftsmanship. Quiet, precise, efficient, and reliability became their secret weapon. Farmers began noticing how long some Japanese tractors lasted with relatively few mechanical problems. Engines started smoothly. Maintenance costs stayed manageable. The machines operated with a kind of consistency that slowly built trust among buyers who originally doubted them. That trust spread carefully at first, then rapidly. And suddenly, companies like Kubota were no longer niche foreign manufacturers. They had become serious competitors on American soil. This shocked many people in the industry because the competition exposed a hidden weakness inside the traditional American tractor philosophy. American manufacturers had mastered giant agricultural machinery, but the growing market for utility and compact tractors was expanding faster than expected. More small farms, more private landowners, more landscaping operations, more specialized farming needs. And Japanese companies understood those markets better than anyone. The rivalry became fascinating because it was never simply about horsepower. It was about two completely different visions of farming itself. American engineering believed power solved problems. Japanese engineering believed precision solved problems. Japanese tractors felt like disciplined efficiency. And somewhere in the middle of that rivalry, farming itself began changing. By the early 2000s, even the largest American manufacturers realized they could no longer ignore what Japanese engineering had accomplished. Some began adapting their own smaller tractor lines. Others partnered internationally. Global manufacturing blurred the old idea that machines belonged entirely to one country. Today, many people driving smaller John Deere utility tractors may not even realize some are manufactured in places like India or Mexico, while Japanese companies like Kubota built massive manufacturing operations directly inside the United States, including huge facilities in Georgia. The lines between American and Japanese slowly became harder to see. But emotionally, the rivalry never disappeared. Because beneath the machines, this was always about culture, about philosophy, about different ways of understanding land, labor, and survival. Even today, there are old-school American farmers who still believe no compact machine could ever replace true horsepower. They want giant frames, deep engine noise, raw pulling strength. To them, farming should feel heavy. And then there are others who quietly admire the smoothness of Japanese engineering, the efficiency, the precision, the way smaller machines accomplish difficult work without wasting energy. Neither side is completely wrong. That is what makes the rivalry so fascinating. Because in truth, both philosophies were shaped by the environments that created them. America produced machines for vast open land. Japan produced machines for constrained precision. And when those philosophies collided on American soil, the farming world changed forever. If you are still watching, subscribe and share this video, because the next story dives even deeper into how global farming technology quietly transformed the identity of the American farmer himself, and why some believe modern agriculture no longer belongs entirely to America anymore. But the deeper the rivalry went, the more personal it became. Because tractors are never just machines to the people who depend on them every single day. Over time, they become habits, routines, memories, and eventually pieces of identity. And once identity enters a competition, logic alone is no longer enough to settle it. By the late 1990s, the tension could already be felt across rural America. In equipment dealerships scattered through places like Missouri and Texas, farmers stood around rows of machinery, debating the future of farming itself without even realizing it. Some looked proudly at giant American tractors lined up beneath bright dealership lights, massive machines with towering tires and engines powerful enough to pull through thousands of acres without hesitation. Others walked quietly toward the smaller Japanese models parked nearby, studying their compact frames, smoother controls, and surprisingly efficient engines. At first, many older American farmers mocked them openly. They look like toys. That thing wouldn't survive one hard harvest. Too small for real farming. But then something uncomfortable started happening. The small machines refused to disappear. In fact, they kept gaining ground. And the reason was simple. The farming world itself was changing. Not every farmer owned endless fields anymore. Not every operation needed gigantic horsepower capable of handling industrial-scale agriculture. Across America, there were orchards, vineyards, livestock farms, vegetable operations, landscaping businesses, and small family properties where massive tractors felt excessive, expensive, and difficult to maneuver. Japanese companies understood this shift before many American manufacturers did. That foresight became their advantage. A farmer operating inside tight orchard rows quickly realized a compact Kubota tractor could move more easily than a giant machine built for wide-open plains. Smaller property owners discovered they could maintain land efficiently without paying enormous fuel costs. Landscapers loved the reliability. Municipal operations loved the simplicity. And slowly, the impossible started becoming real. Japanese tractors were no longer foreign curiosities. They had become trusted tools across American land. That success forced American giants like John Deere and Case IH into a difficult position. They could no longer rely only on the old philosophy of bigger engines and larger frames. The market itself was evolving beneath their feet, and for the first time in decades, the future of farming no longer seemed controlled entirely by American ideas. What made the rivalry even more fascinating was how differently the machines felt emotionally. American tractors carried a sense of dominance, power, weight, aggression. When their engines started, the sound rolled across fields like thunder. The machines looked enormous against the horizon, almost military in their presence. Farmers sitting inside them often described a feeling of control, as if the machine could overpower whatever stood in front of it. Japanese tractors felt completely different. Precise, calm, efficient. The engines sounded smoother, quieter, almost disciplined. Instead of overwhelming the land with force, they seemed designed to work alongside it carefully and intelligently. Many first-time users were shocked by how refined the experience felt. And that contrast revealed something deeper than machinery. It revealed two different national personalities expressed through engineering. American farming culture grew from expansion, huge land ownership, and industrial-scale production. The machines reflected that mentality. Bigger was stronger. Louder meant power. Massive equipment symbolized success. Japanese engineering came from limitation. Less land, narrow spaces, maximum efficiency from minimal resources. Their tractors reflected discipline instead of excess. Neither philosophy was weak. That was the problem. Both worked. And because both worked, the rivalry became endless. By the early 2000s, globalization blurred the competition even further. Many Americans were shocked to discover that some smaller American brand tractors were being manufactured outside the United States, while Japanese companies expanded huge production operations directly inside America itself. Kubota built major manufacturing facilities in places like Georgia, employing American workers and producing machines for American customers. Suddenly, the question became harder to answer. What exactly makes a tractor American anymore? The logo? The engineering? The factory location? The workers? Or simply the soil it works on? That question unsettled many people because farming has always been deeply tied to national identity. For generations, American tractors symbolized the strength of rural America itself. Seeing Japanese brands compete successfully on the same land felt almost symbolic of larger economic changes happening across the world. And quietly, beneath all the dealership arguments and machinery comparisons, there was another fear many farmers rarely admitted openly. The fear that American farming itself was changing into something unfamiliar. Older farmers especially noticed it. The slower disappearance of local repair culture, the rise of computerized systems, the increasing dependence on global manufacturing and international supply chains. Farming no longer felt isolated and independent the way it once had. It felt connected to the entire world. And maybe that was inevitable, because agriculture had become global business now, not just local survival. Yet despite all the technology and international competition, something strangely human remained at the center of the rivalry. Trust. At the end of the day, every farmer still depended on the same simple hope each morning: that the machine would start, that the field would hold, that the season would not destroy them financially. And whichever company earned that trust, American or Japanese, gained something more valuable than sales. They gained emotional loyalty. That is why even today, debates between American and Japanese tractors can become surprisingly emotional in rural communities. Because beneath the surface, people are not only defending machinery, they are defending their understanding of farming itself. And as evening falls across the endless fields of America, with combines moving slowly beneath orange skies and tractors leaving dark tracks through the soil, the rivalry continues quietly, generation after generation. Not as hatred, not even as conflict, but as two philosophies still competing over the same land. Power versus precision, scale versus efficiency, tradition versus adaptation. And somewhere out there tonight, under the fading light of the countryside, an old American farmer and a younger operator driving a Japanese tractor are both doing the exact same thing, trying to survive another season,